After 6 years of being branded a broke loser by my parents and watching my girlfriend dump me for money, they're begging me now that I'm worth $47 million. I'm 31 male now, but this story really starts when I was 23 and fresh out of college with a business administration degree from Arizona State. Nothing fancy, just decent grades and a mountain of student debt like everyone else. My GPA was 3.4, which my family constantly reminded me was respectable, but not impressive. My family was always obsessed with money and status. My dad, Robert Chen, runs a small accounting firm called Chen & Associates that does pretty well for itself, but nothing crazy. He's got maybe 12 employees and handles taxes for local businesses and some wealthy families in Scottsdale. My mom, Linda, works as a nurse supervisor at Banner Health, making decent money, but always stressed about hospital politics and overtime. They're comfortable middle class. They drive decent cars, live in a nice 4-bedroom house in Ahwatukee with a pool, take vacations to San Diego every summer. But they were always obsessed with appearances and what other people thought. Every conversation somehow turned into comparing our family to the neighbors, my dad's clients, or my mom's key workers. My older sister, Jessica, married this finance guy named Derek when she was 24. Derek works at some mid-tier investment firm called Southwest Capital Management, making maybe $120,000 a year and acting like he's Warren Buffett reincarnated. He drives a leased BMW 3 Series, wears expensive suits from Men's Warehouse, and talks constantly about his portfolio diversification and market strategies at every family gathering. My parents absolutely worship this guy because he fits their narrow definition of what success looks like. Derek closed another major account today. My dad would announce at dinner like Derek had just won the Nobel Prize. Real estate investment trust for a client with $800,000 in assets. My mom would beam like Derek was her own son. Such a smart young man. So driven. Then there's me, Ryan. I was always the quiet, creative kid who spent too much time sketching product designs in my notebooks and reading business books instead of playing sports or socializing. While Jessica was doing dance classes and beauty pageants, winning little plastic trophies that my parents displayed like Olympic medals, I was learning about supply chains and manufacturing processes from library books. My parents saw this as antisocial behavior rather than valuable interests. They'd find me reading about logistics management or product development and shake their heads with disappointment. Ryan needs to learn how to network, my dad would say to my mom, like I wasn't sitting right there. Product development is fine as a hobby, but real success comes from relationships and sales ability. You can't make money sitting alone reading books. He's too introverted. My mom would agree. How's he going to succeed in business if he can't even make small talk at parties? When I graduated college in 2015, I couldn't find a decent job immediately. The job market was still pretty tough, especially for new grads without family connections or impressive internships. I sent out probably 200 applications over 4 months and got maybe 12 interviews. Most companies wanted 3 years of experience for entry-level positions, which made no sense. I finally ended up taking a position at a small logistics company called Desert Transport Solutions, making $42,000 annually while living in a terrible apartment complex called The Palms with 2 roommates who left dirty dishes everywhere and played video games until 3 a.m. every night. The apartment had brown carpet that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the 1990s, a kitchen with appliances that barely worked, and thin walls where you could hear every conversation from neighboring units. My family's reaction was predictably disappointing. See, this is what happens when you don't apply yourself, my mom would say during our weekly family dinners. Derek had 3 job offers before he even graduated because he worked properly and interned at prestigious firms. You should have studied finance or law, my dad would add. Business administration is too general. You need specialization to command respect in the marketplace. But the real problem wasn't my family's constant criticism. The real problem was my girlfriend at the time, Madison. Madison Rodriguez and I met during our junior year at ASU. She was studying marketing with a minor in communications and came from serious money. Her dad, Carlos Rodriguez, owned a chain of successful car dealerships across the Phoenix metro area, Rodriguez Auto Group. You've probably seen their commercials on local TV with the jingle, "Rodriguez has the deals that make you smile." Madison was used to a lifestyle I couldn't even imagine, designer bags from Nordstrom that cost more than my monthly groceries, weekly trips to expensive restaurants in Scottsdale where a single entree cost $45, spontaneous shopping sprees that cost more than my monthly rent, vacations to Cabo and Vegas funded entirely by daddy's credit card. Her apartment near campus was a luxury two-bedroom that her parents paid for, complete with granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, walk-in closets, and a view of Tempe Town Lake that probably added $500 to the monthly rent. When we first started dating, I thought she was just a little high maintenance, but basically good-hearted. She was absolutely gorgeous, 5'6", blonde hair with perfect highlights that cost $300 every 6 weeks, fitness model body from her personal trainer, the kind of girl who always looked like she stepped out of an Instagram photo shoot. I was completely smitten and honestly way out of my league in terms of looks and social status. But Madison had very specific ideas about what her post-graduation life should look like. She wanted a guy who could take her to expensive steakhouses every weekend, buy her jewelry for random occasions, take her on exotic vacations, drive nice cars, and live in upscale neighborhoods. When I was making $42,000 and splitting rent 3 ways in a complex where the pool was always broken, that lifestyle wasn't exactly feasible. "It's not about the money," she'd say, which is what people always say when it's absolutely about the money. It's about ambition. It's about having goals and working towards something better. I want a partner who wants more out of life. The constant comparisons started pretty quickly and got worse over time. Her friend Sarah was dating a pharmaceutical sales rep named Brad, who made $85,000 and drove a new Mustang. Her friend Brittany's boyfriend was a real estate agent who had his own Escalade and took her to Napa Valley for weekends. Her friend Ashley was engaged to a guy named Connor, who owned a CrossFit gym and was already talking about opening a second location. "I just don't understand why you're satisfied with so little," Madison would say, when I'd suggest we stay in and order pizza instead of going to some overpriced steakhouse where appetizers cost $18. "Don't you want more for yourself? For us? Don't you want to build something meaningful?" The worst part was that she'd say these things in this sweet, concerned voice, like she was genuinely worried about my lack of ambition, rather than just disappointed that I couldn't fund her lifestyle expectations. The breaking point came about 8 months into my logistics job. Madison wanted to go to her friend Chloe's bachelorette party in Miami. The weekend would cost about $1,200 per person after flights, hotels, clubs, spa treatments, and expensive dinners. I had maybe $800 in my checking account after paying bills, and my credit cards were already carrying balances from trying to keep up with Madison's expectations. "Then figure it out," she said like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Put it on a credit card. Ask your parents for help. Pick up extra shifts. This is important to me." "I'm not going into debt for a party," I told her, "and I'm definitely not asking my parents for money to fund your vacation." "God, Ryan, you're so cheap. It's like you don't even care about my happiness or the things that matter to me." We had a huge fight that ended with her storming out of my apartment, slamming the door so hard that my roommate came out to ask if everything was okay. The next day, I found out through social media that she'd gone to the party anyway, with her friend Tyler, who owned a small construction company, and apparently had no problem dropping $1,200 on a weekend trip. When she came back from Miami with a perfect tan and hundreds of Instagram photos, she acted like nothing had happened, but things were obviously different. She started canceling our dates, being distant and cold when we did hang out, always on her phone texting other people. I found out she was officially seeing Tyler when my buddy Jake spotted them having dinner at some upscale restaurant in Old Town Scottsdale. The breakup conversation was absolutely brutal and happened in my crappy apartment while my roommates were home, so they probably heard everything. "I just think we want different things," Madison said, sitting on my secondhand couch that had a visible stain from when my roommate spilled salsa during a Super Bowl party. "You're content with mediocrity, and I'm not. I have goals and dreams. I'm working towards something better," I protested. "This job is just temporary while I figure out my next move. I'm learning the business, making connections." She actually laughed. Not a mean laugh, but worse. A pitying laugh. "Ryan, you've been saying that for months. Tyler owns his own business. He has ambition and drive. He can provide the kind of life I want and deserve. So this is about money." "It's about potential," she said, grabbing her purse. A Coach bag that probably cost more than my car payment. "Some people have it, some people don't. I'm sorry, but I need to be with someone who's going somewhere in life. We're both 23 years old. How can you already know someone's potential? Because some people think big and take risks, and other people make excuses and settle for whatever's comfortable." She stood up and headed toward the door. "I hope you figure things out, Ryan. I really do. But I can't wait around for you to grow up." The worst part? My family basically agreed with her assessment when I told them about the breakup. I went to my parents' house the next Sunday for our regular family dinner, expecting at least some sympathy or support. Instead, I got a lecture about personal responsibility and relationship management. "Madison was good for you," my mom said while serving her famous pot roast. "She pushed you to be better and think bigger. Maybe you should consider what she said instead of just feeling sorry for yourself. She was a gold digger who wanted me to go into debt to fund her lifestyle." "She was realistic about what she wanted in a partner," my dad replied, cutting his meat with surgical precision. "A woman like that has options. You need to ask yourself why she'd choose someone else over you." My sister Jessica was even worse. She and Derek had been married for about a year at this point and were clearly the golden couple of the family. "Madison was way out of your league anyway," Jessica said matter-of-factly. "Tyler's actually successful. He owns 3 construction crews and just bought a house in Paradise Valley for $750,000, cash down payment." "Maybe this is a wake-up call," Derek added, adjusting his expensive watch. "You can't expect to attract quality women when you're not bringing quality value to the table. It's basic economics." I sat there listening to my own family explain why my ex-girlfriend was right to dump me for someone with more money. Derek continued with his unsolicited advice. "You know what your problem is?" he said, warming to his subject like he was delivering a TED Talk. "You have a scarcity mindset. You think small. You need to think bigger. Take some calculated risks. Put yourself out there in the marketplace." "Easy for you to say," I muttered. "Your dad got you that job." Derek's father was a partner at the investment firm and had basically handed Derek his position after college. But Derek acted like he'd built his career through pure merit and hard work. "Connections matter," Derek said smugly. "But you have to leverage them properly. You can't just expect opportunities to fall into your lap." My mom nodded approvingly. "Derek's right. You need to be more proactive about your career development and more realistic about your dating prospects." Jessica added, "Maybe focus on girls who are more appropriate for your situation." I left that dinner feeling completely defeated. My own family had essentially told me that I wasn't good enough for my ex-girlfriend and that I should lower my standards in every area of life. But here's the thing. They weren't entirely wrong about me being stuck and thinking small. I was working a dead-end job, living in a crappy apartment, and had no clear plan for improving my situation. I just wasn't going to follow their advice about how to fix it. Instead, I decided to disappear from their radar and build something in complete secrecy. After the breakup and the family intervention, I made a decision that changed everything. I was going to build something significant, but I was going to do it quietly. No updates to family, no bragging on social media, no asking for advice or support, just pure focused work. First, I moved out of the shared apartment and got a tiny studio in a sketchy part of Central Phoenix for $650 a month. The neighborhood wasn't great. Lots of parking lots, pawn shops, and fast food restaurants, but the rent was cheap, and nobody I knew would ever visit. My furniture consisted of a mattress on the floor, a desk from Craigslist, and a folding chair I found on the street that someone was throwing away. I looked like a broke college student, which was exactly what everyone expected to see. But while they thought I was spiraling into poverty and depression, I was actually laser-focused on opportunity identification. I kept the logistics job for steady income and health insurance, but started researching business opportunities during every spare moment. I was working 70 to 80 hours a week between my day job and my research, yet keeping completely quiet about it. The idea came from my time at Desert Transport Solutions. I noticed how incredibly inefficient small businesses were at sourcing products. They'd pay ridiculous markups, sometimes 300 to 400% above wholesale, because they didn't know how to find manufacturers directly or were too intimidated to deal with international suppliers. For example, a local restaurant owner was paying $45 for specialty kitchen tools that I could source directly from manufacturers for $12. A boutique clothing store was paying $80 for items that cost $15 to produce. The margins were absolutely insane if you could cut out the middlemen and connect buyers directly with producers. I started small, connecting local businesses with overseas suppliers and taking a modest commission for facilitating the transactions. It wasn't glamorous work. I'd spend hours researching factories in China and Vietnam, negotiating prices through email and broken English phone calls, coordinating shipments and customs paperwork. My first client was a local coffee shop owner named Maria, who was paying way too much for specialty ceramic mugs. She was getting them from a distributor in Los Angeles who charged $18 per mug for items that looked identical to ones I found online for much less. I found a manufacturer in Guangzhou who could produce the same quality mugs with custom logos for 60% less, including shipping costs. My commission on that first deal was $340, which doesn't sound like much, but it was more than I made in a week at my day job and proved the concept worked. Word spread slowly through referrals. The coffee shop owner told a friend who owned a gift shop. The gift shop owner mentioned it to someone who ran a small restaurant chain. Within 6 months, I had 15 regular clients and was making an extra $2,000 to $3,000 per month. By the end of year 1, I was making more from my side business than from my logistics job. By month 18, I quit Desert Transport Solutions and went full-time on my own venture. But here's where my strategy got interesting. Instead of celebrating or telling anyone about my success, I actually started looking even more broke than before. I kept the terrible studio apartment, continued driving my 2003 Honda Civic with the dented door and faded paint, and dressed like I shopped exclusively at thrift stores and clearance racks. Meanwhile, I was saving and reinvesting almost everything. My total living expenses were maybe $2,000 a month, and I was banking the rest. My family saw me driving the beat-up car and assumed I was barely scraping by on unemployment or odd jobs. "Ryan is really struggling," I heard my mom tell her sister during a family barbecue I reluctantly attended. "He won't even ask for help. It's like he's given up on himself." "Some people just don't have the drive to succeed," Derek said, standing by the grill in his polo shirt and designer sunglasses. "It's sad, but not everyone can handle the pressure of real business." I smiled, nodded, and kept building my empire in complete secrecy. The beauty of my business model was that it was almost invisible. I worked from my laptop, communicated through email and messaging apps, and met clients at coffee shops or their offices. Nobody knew how much money was flowing through my operation because everything looked casual and small scale. By year 2, I had over 40 regular clients and had started developing relationships with manufacturers who trusted me enough to offer exclusive deals. But more importantly, I began developing my own products. Year 2 was when things really exploded in ways I hadn't anticipated. I'd built solid relationships with dozens of manufacturers and had a growing list of retail clients who trusted my sourcing ability. More importantly, I started identifying gaps in the market and developing my own proprietary products. Simple things that could be manufactured cheaply but sold for excellent margins because nobody was paying attention to them. Kitchen gadgets that solved specific problems, organizational tools for small spaces, fitness accessories that were overpriced in traditional retail. My first proprietary product was a modular closet organization system that I designed after seeing how poorly organized my clients' storage spaces were. The product cost $3.50 to manufacture in China but solved a real problem that people were willing to pay $29.99 to fix. I moved 50,000 units in the first 6 months through a combination of online sales and retail partnerships. The profit margins were incredible. After manufacturing costs, shipping, and marketing expenses, I was netting about $18 per unit. That first product alone generated over $900,000 in profit. I reinvested everything into better products, larger orders, more sophisticated marketing strategies, and inventory management systems. The business grew from $5,000 a month to $30,000 a month to $85,000 a month. By early 2018, I was pulling in over $200,000 per month between various product lines and still growing rapidly. But I continued to look like a broke graduate student who couldn't get his life together. Family dinners became increasingly painful as my apparent failure contrasted with everyone else's conventional success. Madison had married Tyler in a lavish ceremony at the Four Seasons Scottsdale that probably cost $80,000. They bought a $650,000 house in Paradise Valley with a pool, 3-car garage, and mountain views. Jessica and Derek upgraded to a bigger place in Ahwatukee and started talking seriously about having children and building generational wealth. Everyone was moving forward with their lives, while, apparently, I was stuck in permanent adolescence. "We're worried about you," my dad said during one particularly uncomfortable dinner. "You're 27 years old and still living like you're in college. When are you going to get serious about your career and start building something meaningful?" "I'm working on some projects," I said vaguely, which was technically true but deliberately misleading. "Projects," Derek scoffed, setting down his glass of expensive sparkling water. "That's code for unemployed. You need to get back into corporate America. Build a real resume, start networking with professionals." Maybe Madison was right. Jessica added, not even trying to be subtle. Maybe you just don't have what it takes to really succeed in business. The irony was killing me. I was sitting there listening to people making $60,000 to $120,000 lecture me about success while I was generating more revenue in a month than they made in a year. But I kept my mouth shut and played the role of the family disappointment. Christmas 2018 was particularly brutal. My parents sat me down for what they called a life intervention. They were genuinely concerned about my future and wanted to help me get back on track before it was too late. My dad offered me a job at Chen and Associates for $38,000 per year doing basic bookkeeping and tax preparation. It's not much, he said apologetically, but it's steady work with benefits. And you could learn the accounting business from the ground up. Maybe eventually become a CPA. Thanks, but I'm good, I said. Ryan, you're almost 30, my mom said, her voice heavy with disappointment. You can't keep living like this indefinitely. What happens when you want to get married and start a family? No woman is going to want to be with someone who has no ambition or stability. Like Madison, Jessica added helpfully, as if I needed the reminder. I looked around the room at my family, my parents in their comfortable middle-class home, Derek in his expensive sweater talking about his latest investment strategy, Jessica with her new diamond earrings discussing their vacation plans. All of them completely convinced that I was the family failure who needed their pity and intervention. I'll think about it, I lied, knowing that my business had generated more profit that month than my dad's entire firm. The contempt was getting harder to hide. Derek started making jokes about my career in front of extended family. Jessica would change the subject whenever anyone asked about me. My parents stopped mentioning me to their friends and neighbors. During one family gathering, I overheard my mom talking to my Aunt Sarah about her children's accomplishments. Jessica and Derek are doing so well, my mom said. They're looking at houses in Scottsdale and thinking about starting a family. Derek just got another promotion. What about Ryan? My aunt asked. My mom paused. Ryan is finding himself. He's always been different. The pain of being written off by your own family is hard to describe. Every achievement in my secret business life was shadowed by the knowledge that the people who should be proudest had no idea and probably wouldn't believe it if they did know, but I used that pain as fuel. Every condescending comment, every disappointed look, every family gathering where I was treated like the charity case just made me more determined to build something so big that they'd have no choice but to acknowledge it. By 2020, I was worth about $12 million. But my lifestyle hadn't changed at all. My product business was consistently doing $300,000 a month. I'd started investing in real estate, using creative financing strategies, and had launched 3 additional product lines targeting different market segments. I owned 6 rental properties across Phoenix and Tucson that were generating another $18,000 a month in passive income. My investment portfolio included index funds, individual stocks, and some cryptocurrency that I'd bought when Bitcoin was still under $4,000. But I still lived in the same terrible studio apartment and drove the same beat-up Honda Civic. The cognitive dissonance was surreal. I'd spend my mornings reviewing financial statements showing 7-figure monthly revenues, then drive to family gatherings in my dented car wearing clothes from Target clearance racks. The pandemic actually accelerated my business growth in unexpected ways. Everyone was buying products online, supply chains were disrupted, and small businesses needed reliable sourcing partners more than ever. My experience with international manufacturers meant I could keep inventory flowing when other companies couldn't get products. Revenue doubled, then tripled. By 2021, I was worth $28 million, and my monthly income was approaching $500,000. My family's attitude toward me had evolved from sympathy to frustration to outright embarrassment. They'd moved past worrying about me to being actively ashamed of my apparent failures. I don't know what to tell people anymore, my mom confided to Jessica during a phone call I overheard. Mrs. Patterson asked about Ryan at book club, and I had to pretend he was exploring different opportunities or something equally vague. Maybe it's time for some tough love, Derek suggested during one family dinner. Cut him off financially, force him to grow up and take responsibility. We're not giving him money, my dad protested. But you pay for his phone. You invite him to family vacations. You include him in family events, Derek replied. You're enabling this lifestyle. Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom before they make real changes. This was particularly rich coming from someone whose parents had paid for his MBA and given him a $50,000 down payment on his first house. But Derek had convinced himself that his success was entirely self-made. The breaking point came in March 2022, at Jessica's 30th birthday party. It was held at some upscale restaurant in Old Town Scottsdale called The Mission, the kind of place where appetizers cost $22 and the ambiance is more important than the food. The restaurant had exposed brick walls, dim lighting from expensive fixtures, and servers who acted like they were doing you a favor by taking your order. Everyone was dressed in business casual or cocktail attire, sipping craft cocktails that cost $16 each. Madison was there with Tyler, looking exactly the same as she had in college. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Tyler had put on weight and was losing his hair, but his Rolex was shiny and his construction business was apparently thriving. I showed up in jeans and a t-shirt because I honestly didn't own anything nicer, despite being able to afford the most expensive clothes in the city. I mean, I could have bought the entire restaurant chain, but they didn't know that. Madison made a deliberate point of coming over to say hello, probably out of some combination of curiosity and pity. "Ryan, oh my goodness, how are you?" She gave me the kind of hug you give someone at a funeral, brief, awkward, and full of sympathy. "I'm doing well," I said simply. "That's great. You look," she paused, taking in my discount store appearance, "exactly the same as college." Tyler appeared beside her, craft beer in hand, an expensive watch catching the light. "Ryan, dude, good to see you. How's the business stuff going?" "Can't complain." "That's awesome, man. You know, if you ever want to get into something real with growth potential, I could always use a good administrative assistant. The construction business is absolutely booming right now." I smiled politely. "Thanks. I'll keep that in mind." Madison touched my arm in that condescending way that wealthy people use with poor relatives. "It's so great that you're staying positive and keeping your chin up. Not everyone is cut out for big success, and that's perfectly okay. Some people are just meant to be workers, not leaders," Tyler added, nodding sagely. "Nothing wrong with that. The world needs all types." They walked away, probably thinking they'd done their good deed for the day by acknowledging the family charity case who never got his life together. But watching them walk away, Madison in her designer heels and Tyler with his construction company success story, I realized that I was done hiding, done pretending to be something I wasn't, done letting people who had accomplished far less than me treat me like a failure. That's when I decided it was time for the reveal. The next morning, I called my dad and asked him to organize a family dinner for the following weekend. I told him I had some important news to share and wanted everyone there. "Good news, I hope," he said, probably expecting me to announce that I'd finally gotten a real job or maybe found a girlfriend willing to date down. "Life-changing news," I replied cryptically. Saturday night, everyone gathered at my parents' house. Jessica and Derek, my parents, even my cousin Mike, who happened to be visiting from Tucson. I'd specifically asked my dad to invite Madison and Tyler, which confused him, but he did it anyway. "Why them?" he asked. "Trust me, you'll understand." I showed up in the same beat-up Honda Civic, wearing jeans and a polo shirt I'd had since college. Everyone was already there making small talk and drinking sodas, probably wondering what kind of announcement the family failure could possibly have to make. The dining room felt familiar but different. I was seeing it through the eyes of someone who could buy and sell everything in the room without thinking twice about the cost. "Okay, Ryan," my dad said once we'd all sat down around the mahogany table. "You said you had news to share with everyone." Instead of making a speech, I pulled out my phone and opened my primary business banking app. Without saying anything, I handed it to my dad. He looked at the screen showing the account balance. His expression changed completely. He blinked, looked again, then set the phone down very carefully like it might explode. "What is it?" my mom asked, leaning forward with curiosity. "The balance," my dad said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "It says $47.3 million. Complete silence. You could have heard a pin drop. "That's impossible," Derek said, grabbing the phone with shaking hands. "This has to be fake. Some kind of app that lets you put in fake numbers." I pulled out my laptop and logged into my business dashboard, which showed real-time revenue, profit margins, inventory levels, and financial projections. The current month's revenue was $847,000 and climbing. "This is my company," I said calmly, enjoying the shocked faces around the table. I've been building it for 6 years while you all thought I was failing at life." More silence. Madison was staring at the laptop screen like it was written in ancient hieroglyphics. Tyler had gone completely pale and was gripping his beer bottle so tightly I thought it might shatter. "But your apartment," Jessica said weakly, her voice barely audible. "You live in that terrible studio." "I own that building now," I replied matter-of-factly. "Bought it last year for $2.3 million cash. Seemed like a good investment property. The car. I like that car. It's paid off, reliable, and draws zero attention. But I also own a Tesla Model S Plaid and a Porsche 911 Turbo. They're in a climate-controlled garage across town, along with a few other vehicles." My mom was the first to recover her ability to speak. "Ryan, honey, why didn't you tell us any of this?" I looked around the room at each person individually before answering. "Because I wanted to see how you'd treat me when you thought I had nothing. And it turns out, not very well." I stood up slowly and looked at each person around the table. "Derek," I said, making direct eye contact. "You offered me a job as an administrative assistant making probably $35,000 a year. My company generates more profit in a week than you make in a year." Derek's face was bright red, and he couldn't meet my eyes. "Madison," I continued, turning to my ex-girlfriend who was still staring at the laptop screen. "You left me because I had no ambition and couldn't provide the lifestyle you wanted. I'm now worth more than your dad's entire dealership chain, by a lot." "Jessica," I said, looking at my sister, "you've spent years telling people I was the family disappointment. Turns out I'm the only multimillionaire in this room." "Mom, Dad," I said finally, "you were embarrassed to tell people about me. You offered me a $38,000 job out of pity. I'm 31 years old and financially independent for life." The room remained completely silent. "So here's what's going to happen," I continued, enjoying every second of their shock. "I'm moving to California next month. I bought a house in Palo Alto for $8.2 million cash. I'm expanding my business nationally and looking at some acquisition opportunities." I picked up my phone and laptop and headed toward the door. "Madison, Tyler," I said, pausing at the entrance to the dining room. "Thanks for showing me exactly what kind of people you really are. That lesson was worth millions to me." "Jessica, Derek, enjoy your mortgage payments, car loans, and middle-class lifestyle. Try not to give too much unsolicited advice to people who are actually successful. Mom, Dad, maybe next time don't judge your son based on appearances. Some of us prefer to build wealth quietly rather than show off." I started to leave, then turned back one more time. "Oh, and Derek, that scarcity mindset you diagnosed me with? Turns out it was actually strategic patience. You should look into it." And with that, I walked out the door, got into my beat-up Honda Civic, and drove away from the most satisfying moment of my entire life. The phone call started exactly 48 hours later like clockwork. First was Jessica, her voice shaky and apologetic. "Ryan, I'm so sorry. I had no idea what you were building. Can we please talk?" Then Derek, trying to sound casual and professional. "Hey man, I was completely out of line. I'd love to discuss some potential investment opportunities with you if you're interested." My parents called together on speakerphone. "We're so proud of you, son. We always knew you were special and would find your way." But the most entertaining call came from Madison 3 days later. "Ryan, it's Maddie. I've been thinking nonstop about what happened at dinner, and I realize I made a huge mistake years ago. Tyler and I are having some serious problems, and I keep thinking about us and how good we were together." "Are you divorced?" I asked bluntly. "Well, no, not yet. But we're definitely having issues and—" "Call me when you are. Actually, don't call me at all." "Ryan, please listen. I was young and stupid and short-sighted. I didn't understand what you were building or how successful you'd become. We could be so amazing together now." "You're right about one thing," I said. "You were young and stupid. The problem is you're still stupid. You're just not young anymore." And I hung up. Tyler called the next day asking if there were any job opportunities at my company. Jessica asked for help with their down payment on a bigger house. Derek wanted to discuss synergistic business partnerships and mutually beneficial investment strategies. My parents were the most persistent, calling every few days to check in and casually mention various family financial pressures. Jessica's student loans were becoming overwhelming. Derek's credit card debt was higher than they'd realized. My cousin Mike had some medical bills that insurance didn't cover. Last week, Madison called crying. Apparently, Tyler's construction business had hit some major setbacks during the economic downturn and they were 3 months behind on their mortgage. Could I help them out? For old time's sake? For old time's sake, I said absolutely not, and hung up.